Item number 29.
Drought update and annual water supply management report.
All right. Mr. Hagmark, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. Council members, Joshua Hagmark, Water Resources Manager for the City of Santa Barbara, and here to go over kind of a combination this time. We're going to also be talking about our 2015 Water Supply Management Report. This is a backwards look at the last water year, and then again looking at our Stage 3 drought condition and looking forward. So today's outline, we'll be talking water supply report, and then as we've been talking about monthly, we'll get into weather forecasts, community conservation, water supply strategy, lake and reservoir operations, capital projects that are underway, and water conservation program. So the purpose of this report is to summarize our water supplies used in 2015. And this is a state water project requirement. And we're going to make at the end, hopefully make the findings that the groundwater basins are in long-term balance. Our water supply mix, as we've been talking about, includes groundwater, Lake Cachuma, surface water supplies from Lake Cachuma and Gibraltar, state water, supplemental water purchases, recycled water, water conservation, and now desalination. So just kind of going through our planned versus actual supply mix, what we saw in the actual is we did not have any recycled water produced this year, or a negligible amount. And so that was a change from our planned. We did had plans for the facility to come online in July, and it didn't come on until November. Groundwater was actually on par with what we expected. State water and water purchases was higher than we anticipated. We were able to import more water because there was capacity in the pipeline to do so. Water from Gibraltar and Mission Tunnel was on par with what we expected. Cachuma project, we were able to minimize what we needed from Cachuma as a result of the extraordinary conservation. Our community vastly exceeded our 25% goal and was pushing up against 35%, which gave us a lot more flexibility in being able to carry over more water into this year. Groundwater, this is our one true local supply that we have on this side of the mountain. It is a base load supply that helps us using safe yield, which is the safe amount of water we can remove from the basin without doing any damage. We do look to our groundwater for higher pumping during drought times, and I'll be getting into more details about that. And then there's emergency supply during catastrophic events. There are 3 basins that we look to for our groundwater. 2 of them are potable, Foothill Basin and Storage Unit 1. And then we have Storage Unit 3, which we have been going to for non-potable water and has been helping out with our recycled water system. So the Foothill Basin has several pumpers in that basin, so we're not the only ones in that case. The multi-year drought yield from that basin is about 5,000 acre-feet, according to our USGS model. For 2015, we produced 640 acre-feet, and we estimate at this time there's approximately 2,000 acre-feet of water remaining. Water levels right now are nearing the 1992, which was the lowest the basin has been in a long time. Storage Unit 1 underlies the downtown area. The drought yield from that is somewhere between 7,000 and 13,000 acre-feet. We produced about 1,400 acre-feet from it in 2015, and we estimate there's about 5,000 acre-feet remaining. We do monitor closely seawater intrusion, and we have saw some signs of it, chloride increases, and we continue to track it. We're going to be looking to move some of our pumping this next year into Alameda and High School, which are further inland, to kind of reduce or kind of minimize the impacts of that seawater intrusion. And then storage unit 3, which is like I mentioned, a non-potable groundwater basin. Certainly if we wanted to make that investment in treatment, it could become a potable groundwater, but at this point, the production from that basin is really small. We estimate the safe yield is somewhere around 100 acre-feet, and we were pumping it pretty hard in 2015 and removed 123 acre-feet. We have the basin resting right now, and we're looking at using it to supplement the recycled water system during the summer when we have peak demands, and hopefully try to delay any type of need for expanded storage in the recycled water system, some of the challenges that we have. So we did review this with the Water Commission on December 8th, and it was posted for public review and comment. And the comments were received, were incorporated into the report vision in the council's packet. And at the end of the presentation today, we'll be looking for a recommendation to find the basin in balance. Then jumping into our monthly drought update, we have on here our the forecasts from NOAA, which is expecting above average rainfall for the next 3 months in our neck of the woods, which is very great, optimistic. And however, it's kind of coupled with above average temperatures are also predicted for the next 3 months, which could have some really negative impacts on snowpack. We will be watching this obviously closely, but it's looking optimistic going forward. Rainfall.
But just to question, snowpack is much more than was expected this time. So this year's been looking good, right? Right.
The snowpack is tracking closer to 100% right now, at least in Northern California, which is, yes, very optimistic.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So rainfall for this...
I'm trying to be optimistic here.
Optimism is good. Rainfall for the water year, Gibraltar, 5.29 inches. This is kind of an interesting one worth talking a little bit about. The rain event that came through last week certainly was a pleasant surprise to get that kind of rainfall. The challenge was we got it all on this side of the mountains, which is kind of interesting. Usually we get 2, maybe even 3 times the amount of rainfall on the other side due to the uplift to the mountains, but not in this case. We actually got more rainfall here in Santa Barbara than we did at Gibraltar. And we got close to 4 inches, and that's what 4 inches did for us. Got us up to almost 5.3 inches. But we're significantly behind back there, and that's where we really need this rainfall to come. And so we'll be watching that and reporting on that closely. Lake Cachuma, 72% are normal, and then Santa Barbara at 73% are normal. Water conservation continues to be going well at 28% for the month of December. Again, our target is 25% below our 2013 water usage, and the community continues to do great. It is difficult this time of year to reduce your water usage because there isn't as much discretionary outdoor water using going on, so this is very positive. This brings our cumulative total since declaring a stage 3 to 34%, which is going to continue to buy us options as we move forward, and in particular if we don't get the rainfall we need this year. Our water supply strategy, this is our current water supply strategy, looking for a 25% conservation from the community. Looking out here to year 7, because that's really what we're focused on right now. We're in year 5, but already focused on year 7 and what the needs are for year 7. And our challenge is meeting this need for additional conservation or additional supplies. And certainly we have budgeted this year sufficient money to go after and purchase supplemental water. And certainly if Northern California continues to get the rainfall, it's very optimistic we'll be able to purchase and import water. And then we also have, and talk about that in the next slide, the supply projections. If we were to move to a 35% target, certainly reduces that need going forward and makes it much easier, I think, to get there with water purchases and possibly additional water use regulations that we can talk about. But I think we got a lot of tools in our toolbox. We're off to a good, decent start at this point, even if Southern California kind of peters out. Northern California seems to be doing well right now, and hopefully we'll be able to benefit by importing water. Tentative milestones coming up. There are a lot of decisions to be made. We've been talking about this for the last 2 years now. But on the demand management side, we'd be looking to discuss increased conservation targets in March. We feel that at that point we should have a pretty good idea where we are with water usage. And since we have talked about it at such great lengths, we'll probably bring back a kind of truncated discussion at that point. But then we have supply management side. We'll be needing to commit to water purchases sometime in the April timeframe. So we'll be gearing up for that. And then desal expansion discussions. I mean, state revolving fund loan increase. We've kind of laying the groundwork for what we need to do to increase the loan. March 2016 is when we need to notice for our rates. So we're going to be having a discussion coming up in February and March about what to notice for. And then May 31st, right now, is our proposal expires with IDE to expand the facility. We are in negotiations with them to move that to July 31st to give us a little bit more time to discuss and in particular to get the loan increased. Water rate update. Water rates are in development. We're working on that right now. We anticipate kicking off public meetings in February with Water Commission and Council. Major challenges for FY17. We've budgeted for desal. We've done a prudent job planning. The challenges are reserves are in some pretty poor shape. The community is doing a fantastic job conserving, and unfortunately the side effect to that is revenues aren't where they need to be. And so we'll be talking about what needs to be done to stabilize reserves and to get them back to policy. Gibraltar right now sits at just under 10% capacity. Basically, the water in there is unusable at this point. We've been using other supplies. But the staff that are up there are prepped for El Nino. In particular, they can get cut off during storm events. And so we got them set up, and we got the log booms out to make sure that none of the debris that gets washed down gets caught in the gates and causes other problems. Lake Cachuma, just under 15% capacity. And right now, fish water releases continue. They are coming out of this account that was set aside for passage of fish, but we've been able to talk the Bureau into repurposing it for to satisfy the current fish releases. But it is an account that we would have to refill as soon as there's available water. And then again, the accounting for evaporation is one of the biggest challenges going forward. I have a little graphic here. So here's what's left in the lake. It kind of boils down to this. We have carryover. This is what all the agencies who are Cachuma members have been able to save along the way. This unallocated water here is water coming into Tecolote Tunnel, and that's currently going to offset some of the evaporations from the lake. We have the fish account that I had mentioned that we're using right now to satisfy the releases of about 280 acre feet a month. And then we have the downstream users' water, and then the minimum pool. And this is water that has not been appropriated to anybody yet. It belongs to the Bureau. And so one of the challenges that's going on right now is there's a formula to calculate evaporative losses from the lake, and the formula relies on there being future water in the lake. And since there is no future unallocated water in the lake, it becomes difficult in the sense to quantify the full evaporative losses. So the way the calculation works, there is not enough evaporation to satisfy what's in the lake. So the evaporation needs to come from somewhere. And that's one of the things that we're currently working with the Bureau on. Right now, they believe that additional evaporation should come out of carryover, and we strongly disagree. That would be significant. We imagine that the evaporative losses from the lake will probably be about 7,000 acre feet. Their formula accounts for about 3,000. And so we have this missing 4,000 acre feet of evaporation that we need to figure out whose account it's coming out of. And hopefully it will rain, and that will satisfy those evaporative losses. But if it doesn't, our argument is it should come out of the minimum pool. Drought response capital, we did kick off this week the cleaning of Hopewell. And again, that's a project to maximize the capacity out of that well. located in the middle of Hope Avenue, actually. Desal project update. We will be talking about the contaminated soils in the next presentation, but I was just going to touch on the on-site work. They're continuing, have resumed installation of the underground utilities and excavation. And then on the right here, you'll see this is one treatment train. This breaks down into 7 pieces, but this is one of the 3 treatment trains that will be produced. And what's great about this, they can do it in a factory setting and keep it on schedule and control all the quality. And they'll be testing it and operating it before it's delivered on site. So we have a high level of confidence when it gets here, it'll work. The potable reuse and subsurface intake feasibility study continues. And last week, the draft report was posted to the website, and we'll be looking for comments headed towards a public meeting on Wednesday, January 27th, right here in Council's chambers, starting at 9:30. The technical advisory panel will be reviewing it and taking the input from the public, and then turning around and providing staff with comments on the final document. We will probably talk and just provide a status update on the potable reuse during that meeting, but ultimately the big work product for that is sometime in June 2016, when we hope to have a draft out probably in early June, and then have the public meeting at the end of June. The Montecito Water District sales agreement, we did initiate discussions in fall with Montecito. Discussions continue at the staff level at this time, and there's no significant progress to report. Main breaks, I'm sure many of you have heard and visibly seen some of the main breaks we've had. It's been a challenge. Again, what we're seeing is a lot of aging infrastructure out there, and basically it doesn't take much to push this infrastructure over the edge and cause breaks, and that's really what we're looking at and we'll continue to see. We did suspend the main replacement program during the drought to help us with not only a staffing resource, but financial resources to be able to go after other work that we have and priorities. We are accruing money for the main replacement. Should the drought end, we can get back to this. I did want to speak real quick to the temperature changes. This is one thing you probably heard staff talk about, and what happens there when you have a pipe that's reaching the end of its useful life and you get temperature change, particularly at night when water sits in a reservoir, it chills down, way below 60 degrees. It'll get down into the 40s. And then that in the morning when start using water again, that cold water goes in the system and it causes that cast iron to contract. And, it's been contracting and doing that for 80 years, and it's had it. And so that's when we get a lot of the main breaks, typically when we get the temperature changes. We also see it when we get...
Quick question, if I could. Are those breaks usually at the joints or sometimes just right in the middle of the pipe?
Could be right in the middle of the pipe. Usually it's towards the middle of the pipe. Usually the joints are pretty thick. It's kind of a thickened ends on the pipe. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So we are working on a distribution asset management program to kind of help us best manage all these assets, particularly to help prioritize what needs to be replaced. And one of the elements of this work product that is coming forward has to do with a discussion of possibly accelerating some of our main replacements to try and get ahead of this. What you'll see in this next graphic here, this is a 12-month running average of our main breaks, and what we've seen over the last 6 to 9 months is starting a gradual increase, or a pretty steep increase in the frequency of main breaks. We're up now around 90 main breaks a year, and so the discussion will be, if we wanted to have 50 main breaks a year, what kind of main replacement program do we need to try and get out ahead of that? And so that'll be some of the discussions we hope to have information on and bring back. I mean, right now, when you look at our 10-year average, the trend is still, we're trending down, but certainly these run-ups, you can see there's kind of a seasonality to when these things peak. It typically has to do with the temperature changes in the winter. Then in rainfall, we get, the soils loosen up. Just general changes to an infrastructure that is reaching the end of its useful life. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our conservation coordinator, Ms. Ward.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Madeline Ward, and I'm the Water Conservation Coordinator. I wanted to start off with a brief rain-off reminder. We luckily did get a good soaking of rain for our gardens, so I encourage everyone to let their sprinklers take the winter off. If you haven't already, please turn off your sprinkler timers, and they won't need to be turned back on until the soil really dries out at the root zone, and we've bought ourselves quite a few weeks, and hopefully we'll get more rain in the meantime. All right, so today I'm pleased to discuss with you the 2015 City of Santa Barbara Water Hero Award. This is an award that we give out every year to highlight individuals, businesses, or organizations that go above and beyond in their water conservation efforts and can serve as a an example of water conservation for our whole community. Prior recipients include Santa Barbara City College, the Santa Barbara Association of Realtors, the Tobes Group, and Dennis Allen. And the 2015 Water Hero Award goes to the Eucalyptus Hill Homeowners Association. They retrofitted 5,000 square feet of lawn in their communal areas. They participated in our Smart Landscape Rebate Program and our Free Nozzle Program. And as you can see, they went from green lawn to golden lawn to no lawn at all with a nice palette of native plants. They've created long-term lasting changes to reduce their water usage. Their current average is a 45% reduction, and the projected savings once the plants are established is 65%. They had a rebate pre-inspection in late 2014, and they finished their project in November of 2015. And they knew this was a big undertaking, so they formed a planning committee. They educated homeowners and the HOA board to get buy-in from everyone involved. Just a couple quick quotes from the main residents that were involved. Mary Lou Edick, who is a board member, said that she always heard that the old landscaping, the lawn and the shrubs, looked very old-fashioned and in need of an update. And Barbara Calder, who's pictured there, she is one of the planning committee members, and she stated that the most rewarding part of the project is to see the finished new landscape and how beautiful it is, and how excited everyone is to see the change. So they hired a landscape architect and landscape contractors, and the board was very involved in this new landscape palette that they chose. They retrofitted their old pop-up sprinkler system to drip irrigation, and they installed a smart irrigation controller with a weather station. So they converted their lawn to a beautiful waterways garden that also has many native plants involved. In addition to their communal areas, all 27 homeowners' front yards include waterways plants and many rain gardens, and they really serve as a great example to other homeowner associations within the city who may be looking at better resource efficiency in the future.
So then wrapping up here, we just wanted to go back to the recommendation before you today, which is defining that our basin is in our groundwater basin is in long-term balance and compliance with the state water project conditions on adoption of the 2015 Water Supply Management Report. And we'll take any questions.
Thank you. And we did have speaker slips, but they are no longer in the room, so it's to the council at this point. Mr. Hotchkiss.
Just a quick question. Are our main breaks related to the age of the particular main, or is it purely at random as far as we can see?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Hotchkiss, the age makes a big difference, and the material of the pipe makes a big difference. We have cast iron is a big challenge for us, and over the weekend we had that spike in main breaks, and a large portion of that was cast iron lines.
And so clay is
sewer pipes. There's all.
Other than cast iron, what do we have?
We have ductile iron, which is the replacement of cast iron. There is steel lines. We use those for trunk mains, transmission mains. We have PVC, which is kind of our preferred go-to now. And then we also use, it's called high-density polyethylene. It's kind of the hose-like material, and we do use that in certain areas too.
Can our replacements incorporate PVC within existing pipe so that we don't have to dig up everything and could refurbish it faster?
A few years ago, actually, on Anapamu, there was a product out by 3M, and it's a product where they do it entirely internal to the pipe. And so they come in and they scrape the inside of the pipe, and then it spins on and hardens. It's like a epoxy, and it's actually structural. The challenge with that, though, is they were there cleaning and putting this product on for about a week longer than if we just would have replaced it. And the cost, at this point, they're still experimenting and trying to build clients, and I think it's not quite perfected yet. And so we're watching closely. I think it's the holy grail to find some type of in situ form type material for water mains, but it isn't out there yet. It's really swept through the wastewater industry and been a huge game changer there, but there really isn't anything yet for water. Because
I know for residential purposes, pipe within pipe does seem to be working.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's just they go in and they pipe burst it, and with the small little lines they could do that, but with the type of lines we're talking about, it just unfortunately doesn't work.
And we're talking 6-inch plus?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the report. You allude to Gibraltar having reduced storage capacity. Do we have you tried to quantify that? I know back in the day we used boats out on there to do it that way, whereas now since there's no water, then how do you do it?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, council members, we did complete a bathymetric survey a few years ago, and then the current capacity is around 5,700 acre feet is what it'll hold. It was, when it was originally built, it was 14,000 acre feet. Then they raised the dam again and got it back to 14,000 acre feet. And then it's been slowly dwindling. We have the pass-through agreement that's in place right now, which kind of locks the reservoir in for the next 40 years at 8,000 acre feet. So as we lose capacity during spills, we will gain that water back in Kachuma. But it's a very complicated pass-through agreement, and we're still working out the tracking for that, accounting for that water.
And then, so thank you for that. So roughly 5,000 acre feet of capacity left at that point. Mm-hmm. And is your sense with that if, obviously the Zaka fire just has destroyed or certainly made very difficult using the reservoir for, I don't know, was that now 6 years or 7 years or whatever, some chunk of time like that.
Councilmember White, we lost about 2,000 acre feet of capacity as a result of the Zaka fire, so it caused some pretty significant damage to the reservoir. We did, and I think I've talked about this before, we did look at the idea of dredging and removing the silt, and it's very complicated with just ignoring all the environmental impacts. Just the removal and hauling was somewhere north of $100 million just to get back to the 7,000 acre feet we had before the Zaka fire. So removal of sediment is not, the kind of volumes that we're talking about are just massive.
Yeah, no, I remember there was an effort that was made back in the day. There must still be even is there a little dam somewhere up there where silt was pumped up to that? I don't know, 20, 25 years ago, something like that. Mm-hmm. Okay, anyway, to continue on, groundwater resources. We have been waiting for quite a period of time for the USGS to chime in on or do a report on the groundwater basins. I appreciate that the work is proceeding otherwise as it's being used. What's the status of USGS's work at this point?
Thank you.
That's still suspended at this point?
Yes. So USGS, our model is done. The model is done, and what we are waiting on right now is just a final report from USGS. We've actually had them put that on the back burner because they've been helping out with the potable reuse feasibility study and modeling what the impacts would be of putting our advanced treated water into our groundwater basins. So they're currently using our model, which is great, and it's, I mean, essential that we have it. They're using that model to do a whole bunch of different test runs on how much capacity we could actually, take advantage of with indirect potable reuse. And once they're done with that, then they'll get back to finalizing that report. But the model is done, and it is usable, and it's already bearing fruit.
So do we have a sense of when, I mean, they were going to look at all three basins and come up with sort of an overall, a recommendation on a master plan there for how to use the water? Is that?
Yes. Yeah, and we've seen a rough drafts of it. I think we'll see a final by May. We should see, they should be wrapping up by the end of February their work on the indirect potable reuse stuff, and then they can get back to this.
Great. I was gratified to see in your work here that you were alluding to needing to move water extraction inland, which was a thesis from 30 years ago, and then we're obviously not there yet. I hope that when they do come back, that we take a closer look at that for the long term, even in Basin 1. I have a feeling that we can still do significantly better in being able to extract water without that impact on the saltwater intrusion. And finally, Madam Mayor, it just feels like we're kind of whiffing it on this rain year. I mean, we've got one very nice series of rainfalls, but it's like there's a chance of rain. We're going to chance to get a half inch of rain, nothing, and then another one comes along, another half inch. Nothing. So it's a little discouraging so far. I hope that El Nino changes its mind and starts to deliver some rainfall that will end up with water in our reservoirs. Thank you for your report again.
Mr. Hart?
I was looking at the water supply management report, and something caught my attention, something I hadn't seen before. On page 9, there's reference to potable reuse and direct potable reuse, and talking about using an engineered buffer in lieu of an environmental buffer. If I'm understanding this right, we're talking about creating a storage facility to hold water, to have it meet the state standards as opposed to injecting it into the ground, or am I just misreading this entirely? What is this referring to?
Well, that's a lot of where the discussion's going with the potable reuse. There isn't any regulations yet that support the engineered buffer, but that's what's being developed right now as potential options for an engineered buffer. And so one example could be taking advanced treated water, which in theory would be completely safe to drink, and we would pipe it up and put it into Laurel Reservoir, and then it would be treated again as a surface water. And that piping, that 5 miles of piping from the treatment plant all the way up to Laurel would be kind of this engineered buffer. We'd have testing along the way. If there was ever any filter failure or problem, the water could be stopped and dumped. And then you'd also have that mixing effect that could go on in Laurel. And then you have the ability to then distribute it anywhere along the South Coast. So that's one of the options that's being explored right now under the potable reuse study.
And that's something that the state is encouraging local agencies to consider as an option, or are we ahead of the curve?
We're ahead of the curve, and they're looking for input. We want to try. Right now, they're developing draft guidelines. We want to make them aware of this potential option for us so they can take that into consideration when they're developing their guidelines. And I think that's what they're looking for. We want to hear what folks are kicking around right now. And so this is a good time for us to get back to them and give them that kind of input. And hopefully when they come up with these guidelines, it will somehow speak to that point.
Well, that's very impressive, and kudos to you for pressing that kind of a case. Is there any place else around the state that's looking at this, or is this something you're leading?
Others are using it. San Diego obviously San Diego and LA are really the pushing leaders in this, but they're looking at putting it into larger reservoirs. They're looking at putting it into like a Cachuma, and in that case, they do consider that an indirect potable reuse because it's such a large reservoir. So we're looking at kind of a hybrid. Having that pipeline and that time in order to capture any problem, and then having the ability to mix it is, I think, kind of a hybrid that it isn't out there quite yet.
Great. Well, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for the report. We do need a motion for item B.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Moved by Murillo, second by Hart. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, that's unanimous. Okay, item number 30.